Hi, I'm Tom Vander Well, CEO of Intelligentics, and the best advice I ever got was actually from a mentor of mine who told me that I should always keep track of the number of the days that I've been alive. Today, 20,116.
20,116? That's vaguely specific or oddly specific. Not vaguely, right? That's oddly specific. So Tom, what have you done with that? I mean, how does that help you? Does that just give you perspective, or how does that serve you?
It has. So it actually was a boss of mine. I was only like 15, 16 years old. And I realized that I I wasn't really great with time management. I'm kind of a right brain creative type. You know what that's like, Phil? And so,
Whoop, whoop.
so uh, details and time functions just it didn't come naturally to me. And I noticed that he had this really cool. Back in the day, it was actually a leather day timer. If everybody remembers day timers,
Mhm.
and everything was tabbed and organized, and he had his little mechanical pencil, and I'm like going, I want you to teach me about time management. So, and he said, rule number one, and he had this number at the top of his page. He said, keep track of the number of your days, and that's lesson number one. So go figure it out. And now you can find a website that'll do that for you in 2 seconds. Back in the day, I had to get a calculator and a calendar and figure out the days. But what it taught me was really a couple of things. Number one, look, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow isn't a sure thing. It's only an assumption. So make the most of this day and make sure that you are focused this day. And that was really helpful for me because in business, look, we can get so freaked out and worried about tomorrow, which we can't control. We can get so heavy burdened with the things that happened yesterday that are gone. So just being able to let those things go and worry about what I need to focus on today has probably been one of the biggest life lessons I've ever learned.
Wow. Wow, that's really good, man. So I looked just for fun here, 17342 for me. So
Okay.
that's I'm catching you, but not quite. So that's interesting though. I do love that lesson though about focusing on this day, right? This is the only one
Yeah.
we'll ever have just like it, and the best we can do is be present in today and not stress
Yeah.
so much about it,
And
right?
so actually in January of this year, I had my 20,000th birthday party, which was kind of fun. I mean, how boring is it to track your years?
Right?
And I had a lot of fun just with some friends and inviting them over and say, hey, we're celebrating 20,000 birthdays.
That's great. That's great. And your wife is only 12, right? So she doesn't count the days, right? Because women, they don't tell their age,
Exactly.
right?
We
So
just don't. Yes, we just don't talk about it. It's good. Some
big
things in
snay on
marriage
the
you just
age
leave
thing.
alone, right?
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Well, you learned that lesson too. That probably was learned early on in
Well,
marriage. So
it was
that's
a
a good one.
hard lesson to learn, and I've got a failure of one marriage to account for that. So, but
Yeah.
I've gotten better.
Practice, not failure. Practice.
Exactly.
Right? So that's fun,
Yes.
man. Very cool. Very cool. Well, so we've talked for a long time about call centers, customer experience, high touch with high tech.
That's
So
how we met,
let's,
isn't it?
yeah, that's totally how we met. Gosh, 15, 16 years ago, back when I was part of your mug club. I had a nice, beautiful gold mug that you sent me. Or no, actually, no, that's not true. You didn't send it to me. You delivered to me in person. You came to Milwaukee
I
and we had
did.
lunch. We had lunch and you gave me
Yeah.
a nice gold mug. And it was all about, right, being, about customer service. So Tom, 40 years though, I read on your website now, 40 years of experience. You're not old enough to have done 40 years. So I'm guessing you have a team that you're counting the 40 years for. Or is that just you?
That's the company. I didn't start with the company until 1994, so it actually started in '87, and yeah, so I did. I mean, I was brought in, and interestingly enough, the founder of our company, a man by the name of Charles Winger, who's now deceased, but Chuck, was actually the same mentor who taught me about days when I was in high school. He was in a different job. he hired me
No
for an
way.
after school job, and years later, I was looking for work, and it just happened that he called on the day that I quit. And he said, "Wait a minute, you're quitting?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to meet you at 2:00." And I started working for him again. And then in 2005, I took over, me and my partner. He retired. We took over the business, and then he was chairman of the board and passed away just about 2014, I think 2015. But yeah, so it was kind of a fascinating. It's amazing, isn't it, how this life journey goes? You just
Yeah.
never know where things are going to lead. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing today. Just never did.
Wow. I did, you know, I didn't know that, Tom. That's so interesting. I mean, I knew it was for a long time it was the C. Wenger Group, and now it's
Yeah,
Intelligentics, which is really, wow, that's Chuck. That's cool, man. I didn't know that. So,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
back
And Chuck
in,
was great. I mean, he had a
wow.
huge impact on my life. But we decided, you know, and it was great. We honor Chuck. We honor his legacy. But at some point, the name C. Wenger Group just, it's a branding thing, right? You're all about branding, and when you have people going, "Well, what, you're a brokerage? No. Law
Right.
firm? No." You're kind of going, "Okay, this isn't working for us." So I led the efforts to rebrand to Intelligentics, where intelligence meets tactics, and we just decided, hey, it's time. It's time to move into the new era and brand ourselves for what we are. So that was a great experience for me to lead the company through that.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a great experience for your prospects too, who now understand more what you do, which is super helpful. I mean, if you can spit out what you do quickly and it sticks and it makes sense, that's beautiful. If you have to explain it too much, I mean, some curiosity is good for sure, right? Because you're not
Great.
exactly sure what intelligentics means, right? So intelligence meets tactics. Ah, now I get it, right? So it needs the sentence. But I think that's lovely, right? That makes it memorable. It's a small mouthful instead of a marble mouthful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And it also helps with even our team, because everybody in your team gets asked, what is it that you do? And so we knew that everybody was struggling with it. And it just helps when you are branded correctly, there's a sense of like serenity for the whole team, because they kind of know and they can communicate it easily, and it gives them sort of a place to be. So it's good.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's so important. You need a place to land land the brand, if you will, right? You got to
Right.
have some stickiness there. So let's talk first. Let's talk about these phone calls, right? That's how we
Yeah.
started. A lot of
Yeah.
phone call stuff. So 15, 20, 30 years ago, I mean, phone calls were it. What was different then that is different now?
Well, obviously, technology is changing so rapidly. But when I started, the whole, in fact, our marketing team, when we did the rebranding, you know, I think on the website it calls me a pioneer in quality assessment. So I feel like the American Gothic with the pitchfork, but it kind of feels like that, because you probably remember this. The first client I worked with in 1994, we literally had to go into this like utility closet where the phone, there used to be this big panel with all the
The
phone jacks.
switch.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
switch. And we would literally plug a voice activated recorder or a Marantz cassette recorder in an agent's line and then wait for them to answer and then hit the record button. And we had people we hired to basically sit there all day waiting for someone to pick up the phone and then record the call. So the, going from that to what it is today with voice over IP, and it's just a completely different ball game from a technology perspective. Probably the biggest thing that comes with that is that the thing that I've seen over time is that technology is the tail that wags the dog in business, right? So technology sort of just drives everything. And everyone is talking about AI. Everybody is talking about voice analytics. And so that's probably the number one topic that we we face right now is companies weighing that, and kind of the old fashioned having a human being listen and assess a phone call. It's not sexy and it feels kind of clunky in today's technology world, but there are things that it does better than voice analytics, and it's scalable, right? I mean, yeah, okay, Wells Fargo can afford voice analytics to be able to do all these things, but if you're the community bank of Linville, Iowa, and you got 3 people in the office that are taking phone calls for the customers, it doesn't make sense from a cost perspective, and there are things that you can still learn. And I would also say this, what we've learned about voice analytics is there's some things that it does really, really well. It's really great at taking a huge number of phone calls and then giving you sort of a feedback of what are the things that are being said. Again, what are the keywords? What are the things that are keep coming up that the customers are saying? But when it comes to actually getting down to how is Bob doing and communicating with customers, and understanding, okay, what's going on in the operation of the business that we know about? What do we know? We've been listening to this company now for 10 years. We understand what's happening at all levels of the business. So there are things as a human being I can hear in the subtext, in the context of that conversation that a computer isn't going to know. And so there's information in that phone call that a human being listening to just a couple of phone calls can glean a lot of really important intelligence that could have an impact on the tactics you need to employ, if that makes sense.
Well, totally, right. And if you think about it, it just makes so much common sense that a human being is going to hear different things, pick up different patterns than just the data, right? I mean, technology is great for data analysis, not often tonation and human patterns, as well as then overlaying those over each other with, and today was the day that we laid 50 people off, or today was the day of something crazy that happened. Oh, now I know why Bob is having a rough day. Now I know perhaps why this customer is upset because I lay that over something else. So that's super, super interesting, right? I mean, because
it is. And they're really, there's a place in the world for both of them, and both of them have their place, and it can be very critical and give you different pieces of the puzzle. But you have to understand that it's not an either or, it's a both and kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely, right. I think that is a great point, right? It is a both and, not an either or, because certainly Tom and I enjoy technology, right? We like tech, Tom, and we're on LinkedIn, we're early bloggers, right? Hi, Christina, glad that you're here, right? So that this is making perfect sense to you. We're glad it is, right? That's great. But it's also, we have to have the human side, because if it was just as easy as recording calls and analyzing data and spitting back an Excel spreadsheet with 17 trends that you see, well, then you wouldn't need a human to even answer the phone, because then we can program the computer to be able to do that. So Tom, give us some more examples of where high touch meets this high tech that you're kind of in the middle of that with Intelligentics.
So let me give you an example. Okay, so we talk about where intelligence meets tactics. The thing that I have often seen in 40 years of doing this, or 40 years of our business and the 30 years me doing this, is that we've got oftentimes the research piece that is usually handled in the silo from the marketing and sales team, who are trying to maybe understand something very different. And then the quality assessment that happens from the contact center perspective is the thing that, there we go. Sorry about that call. But from that perspective, the call center folks, they are listening to the calls without really listening it from a customer's perspective, because they don't have that information that the that the marketing team has. And also, they're just listening to how Bob is doing. When the reality is there is so much more intelligence in that conversation. So a great example from what Intelligentics does, we had a company, they are a distributor of electronic widgets. And they came to us a few years ago and they said, we would like to really understand where we sit in the minds of our customers compared to all of our other, all these other competitors that are in our same space. So we went out, we did a research project, designed the research to get them the intelligence that they wanted. It came back that they were in a good position. There's a whole bunch of information they got about their brand and what people think of their brand. But there were two key takeaways to that research. One was that they had an issue with the cost of their shipping, which wasn't readily transparent to the customer compared to competitors, and the customers were frustrated. There were some things that were happening that were all about the digital transformation that needed to happen from an operations perspective in order to make sure that the customer was getting timely information and accurate information about the cost of the shipping, when it went out, what the ETA was, all that good stuff. So there's an operational piece for them. The other piece was they had a customer service problem. So then digging into the data, we learned that the customers who contacted them and worked with somebody on the phone was far more satisfied than those who had ordered and communicated via email. So now we're getting down to the crux of the problem. Well, what is that? That's the human element. Well, what's happening with our email? Okay. I remember the CEO in the meeting said, well, what's wrong with our emails? And I said, give me 100 emails and I'll tell you. And so literally the next piece of the puzzle is our service quality assessment. It's not just about phone calls. It could be chat. In this world of omni-channel, assessment needs to happen on all the different channels. So we took 100 emails, we analyzed it, and it was very quickly understood what was going on. Email was being treated like a text message. It reflected poorly and unprofessionally. It was really inconsistent from agent to agent. So very simply, sit down. Hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to assess 5 emails every month for the next 12 months. And then every month, we're going to give the CSR some feedback. And every quarter, we're going to sit down and we're going to coach them on how to format and write a really good, quick, professional email. In 8 months, we went back to the customers and customer satisfaction jumped 17 points in 8 months. It's not rocket science.
Well, but it does take some deliberation here. Let's be clear, Tom. If all we're doing is recording calls and spitting back data, we'd have never figured that out because we're like, hey, customer service seems fine. I don't know what the problem is. And yeah, we have emails. They're going out on time. They're not misdelivered, right? I mean, chat is happening.
Yep.
But to your point, now that we have a human touch, now we think about this as an omni-channel opportunity here. Oh, we got phone call. We have text message. We have chat. We have email. We
Yep.
have maybe even self-service, right? Now we've got a bunch of different touches.
Yep.
And yet, if all we did was analyze the phone calls, well, it sounds really good.
Yep.
But, to your point, I would bet also people recognize that they could actually get help on the website with chat, with FAQs, with email, because it was shabby before, and now it's satisfactory plus, right? So now the people that call up aren't already hacked off when they're going to talk to you. Now they're all like, hey, yay, Tom, my buddy, what's up? And I think that's, that's often a big miss because if we don't humanize this, we single channel and we look at one. Oh, email, good. Text, good. Chat, good. Phone calls, good. Oh, there's no problem here. But if we're holistic, right, if we assess every channel as you suggest there, we have a lot better opportunity. And
Yeah.
Tom, yeah. Talk to us more about that, because I
Well,
think
and
that's
what, yeah,
instructive.
you are just firing on all cylinders here, Phil, because you're hitting all the right pieces. Here's the next level of this. Okay. So, and measuring everything, what we're seeing in a lot of research right now, and if you haven't talked to your customers, if you haven't surveyed your customers specifically to get this type of information about what are they thinking, what are they expecting when they're trying to communicate with you, it's a critical piece of intelligence that you need. So what we're seeing, we're doing a lot of work right now with a lot of B2B clients, electronics, components, industrial, moving shipments from point A to point B. And number one, that's a marketplace in B2B that has traditionally, customer service, well, can't do that anymore, number one. Number two, it's also a place where the generational gap is showing itself very quickly. So we'll see where, okay, you've got X percentage of your customer base that are 50-year-old engineers. They want to talk to a human being. They want to be treated with, with some courtesy and some respect. And they're much more like going, hey, I need to hear it from your voice. Then you've got this whole new crop of millennials and, the 20 somethings that are coming into the workplace. They don't want to talk to a human being. They just want it to be automatically pushed to the mobile. And then if they have to, they wouldn't even mind texting rather than that. But with these two channels now, so, okay, we're going to give you chat or we're going to give you text. But the expectations of both those customer bases of the channel that they're communicating in can be completely different. So now we can't kind of go, okay, well, this is our customer service model and apply it to all the channels. You got to understand the customers of each channel, what they want and what they expect, and make sure that you're delivering. It gets more complex the more complex the technology becomes.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I would also argue the easier it is for your user to access, often the harder it is to communicate with them, because it
Yes.
seems easy, right? It's easy for me. So what the heck, man? I can just one word answer you. Yep, that's right. Okay, go ahead. No, hold on. Hold on. My mom is going to be very different talking to than me, who's going to
Yep.
be very different than talking to my 14-year-old.
Yes.
Very, very different. And we might all use text. We might all use chat, but knowing that it's my 70-plus-year-old mom or my 14-year-old, or
Yep.
knowing, but again, that's about customer knowing here as well as data, right? It's both. You have to, you're dancing here. And one of the things Christina Sorelli says is super, I love this, right? Senior living communities need this, right? Because to
Yep.
your point, my sweetheart is in senior living. So Christina, I understand how important this is. You have to really talk, how we talk to mom, who might be the resident, is different than how we talk to Christina, the daughter, which is very different than we talk to Phil, the grandson, which might be different than we talk to, the great grandson or someone else. But we need that omni-channel data
Yes.
and touch in order to get there. So Tom, you said though this isn't always that expensive, right? Is there? But at the same time, I mean, do you have? Is there like a little bit of tact that they can have
Yep.
so that they're
Yep.
not sitting there like plugging into the switch?
Well, exactly. There are different things that you can do, and most telephony software and telephony suites has some kind of add-on. The thing that I would caution you is, especially depending on the size of the operation. Typically, if you're a smaller operation, and by the way, Intelligentics has worked with companies of all sizes, from the United Health and John Deere's and of the world to mom and pop shops. With, in fact, I had one team that it was one guy. He was a sales team working out of a closet, and I started with him. And 20 years later, he was managing 6 people. But we were able to scale what we did to meet them where they were, help them get what they needed, and grow with them. And they were extremely successful over time. So they couldn't afford to hire 5'9" or some, major, huge thing. They were dealing with the the size of operation that they had. But there are options out there. We work with a partner vendor in another part that focuses on kind of a black box recording solution, any platform, analog or digital, any size. It's scalable by size and can be really fairly inexpensive. So that's one thing. There are different options. I think that when you start talking about again, going to the telephony suite, be careful about hey, a push button will fix everything. Most big technology companies, and I'm speaking again, I'm agnostic here. We're not in bed with any of the telephony, and we've used most of them over time as far as the recording solutions and the Calabrios of the world, whatever. Hey, they all do their thing, but they want to sell you on an entire suite of services. Oh, just pay this price and then it will do everything for you. It's a push button thing. And Phil, from your days in contact centers, it just doesn't work that way. It takes time. There's some complexity to it. So one of the things that we talk about as you think about, okay, well, I'm not a big company. What can I do on a small scale? Here's what I've learned in my years. If you have never done any kind of QA effort, there is a ton of improvement that you can realize from one small assessment. So typically what Intelligentics will do with clients is, hey, let us, like the example I gave you, give me 100 emails. Here's what it'll cost us to assess 100 emails. And from that one report, I can tell you exactly the 5 or 10 things that you're typically missing in order of priority based upon what the customer expects and the things that are having the most negative impact on your customers, so you have a priority with which to start coaching and training your people. That can all come from one. Now you've got this, there's so much low-hanging fruit. So just one assessment of 100 phone calls. In fact, we have at Intelligentics.com a thing called Inspect 100. Give us 100 chat transcripts. Give us 100 emails. Give us 100 phone calls. It'll cost you a couple grand, but we're going to give you some really good data on where to start. Where are your pain points from a customer perspective, and tactically, what are the best things you can start to do? And then from there, even if you did that once a year, you're a long ways from where you were before. We do it once a year. Have Intelligentics come back. We'll see. Hey, did we make improvement from last year?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting that you say that, because I think so many get wrapped up in the massivity of a report that they forget that there's probably 2 or 3 that are the most important things that if you fix, they'll move the needle the most. And one of the things you have in your blog, a quote from Greg McHugh, and it says, the overwhelming reality is this: we live in a world where almost everything is worthless and a few things are exceptionally valuable. And I would say nothing could be more true than when we're talking about customer service, than we're talking about QAing phone calls, right? Because it isn't everything. I mean, people don't care if you're saying or, but they do care if you're rude, if you're snotty and you're stupid and you don't know anything. So if we just if we combine, if we bisect that, okay, don't worry so much about being perfect, worry more about being human.
Yes.
But how do we how do we hear that? How do we measure that? So Tom, I know that you have a ton of data, right? 40 years. So, but talk to me. What are some? I just probably threw, and I didn't mean to throw all yours out there. But what are some of those most important, vital few as we're looking at customer service and phone calls?
So, and you know this from your days in contact centers. The number one thing, it doesn't matter how many years we've been doing this. It always comes out to just resolve my issue or my question is always the number one thing. Okay. Number 2 is typically always be courteous and friendly. And years ago, I saw a lot of research come back from our Intelligentics research team, and for a contact center, it would be those 2 things: resolve my issue, be nice. What we've seen in the last 8 to 10 years in particular is now it's being fractured more and more into more nuanced pieces. And the third dimension that's coming into play is time. So the thing that you need to understand from how do we translate that into what I should be saying to my customer is, understanding that resolving my issue is a penalty, what we call a penalty variable. In other words, if you resolve my issue, I'm not going to reward you for resolving my issue because that's just what I expected. But if you don't do it, I'm definitely going to penalize you. Whereas a reward variable is if you do it and the more you do it, the more satisfied I'm going to be, the more I'm going to reward you with my satisfaction. And that's where a lot of times the courtesy and friendliness piece can come into. The time-related issues can kind of fall into both of those camps depending on the specific dimension. We're talking about quickness in reaching somebody. How quick were you able to respond and follow up as promised? How easy was it for me to find your phone number so I even knew where to call? There's all these little things that can make a difference. So now let me get to the crux of your question, which is what are a couple of the most important things? One is most customers, when they get a hold of a live human being, if we're talking about phone, they want to know that they've got somebody, number one, who is capable and is going to take care of them, responsible. Number two, they want to feel like they've got somebody who cares. So typically, one of the things that we teach people, it's really simple, but it's one of the most powerful things you can do is just what we call an empathy resolution statement or an empathy ownership statement, where the customer calls in and says, hey, you know what, I just got your product and I opened up the package and there's a piece missing. How am I supposed to? Okay, good example. Well, Mr. Jones, I'm going to be personable here. Well, Mr. Jones, I'm so sorry that it's missing a piece, but I am going to take good care of you here. We're going to get this resolved for you as quickly as possible. Now, in that one statement, I've used your name. I have empathized with you. Say, hey, we're sorry that that happened. And I've specifically said, I am going to get this resolved for you as quickly as possible. Now, the caller immediately kind of goes, okay, good. I've got somebody who cares. I've got somebody who has treated me like a human being that has a name. And I've got somebody who sounds like they know what they're doing. And they're going to take care of me. You have just immediately created a raving fan in most scenarios. What we often hear is, yeah, this is Tom Jones and I got your package and I opened it up and there's a piece missing. Silence. That's usually the first thing we hear is silence. And then, okay, and what part was it? Or do you have an order number on that? That is so typical in almost any industry. Silence followed by, what's your account number? What's your phone number? Oh my gosh, it's just using a little empathy and taking a little ownership will go a long way because it affects the resolution piece. I got somebody who's going to resolve this for me. It affects the courtesy and friendliness piece. They use my name. And it affects the timeliness piece. They're going to try and get this done as quickly as possible. Oh, I'm so happy. And I just hit all the things that are important to a customer right there.
Yeah, and tone of voice matters. Not just reading from a script. Here's where I see the miss, right?
Okay.
Because sadly, I still make plenty of phone calls. I love my phone, right? I actually use it as a phone. I'll call the bank. But yeah, here's the thing. It is so obvious. Oh, thank you, Mr. Smith. It is really great that you are having a problem today, sir. I will fix that as quickly as possible. No! No, that's not, you're not making me feel good, right? Christina says here, did you check the box, right? Check the box. Yep, I said, right? So you read the words. Hello, Mr. Gerbishak. It is a fine day here. I am so sorry that you lost your thing. I will fix it as quick as I can. No, come on. Give me some humanity. Don't just check the box, right? Actually, give me some humanity. That's where I love empathy, ownership, statement. 3 big ones there. Empathy. Does this person understand that I don't want to really be talking to you? I don't really like to talk on the phone.
Yeah, the fact that I'm even calling you is, I'm already pissed off.
Boo, right? Ownership. Own the fact that you can solve the problem and then state the time. Here we go. I'm going to fix it for you as quick as possible. And I'm sorry that happened. That sucks. Oh my gosh. Right. I mean, that changes the game completely, because
Yes.
now I know, or even, oh wow, that's really awful. I'm so sorry that we didn't send you that piece. Can you remind just what piece was that? So, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to send it out to you. Just tell what's the piece.
Yep.
Oh, good. Hey, to make sure that I can send that back out to you, right? Let me verify some information. Especially
Exactly.
if I come through your automated phone system and I know that you verified my number and I know that you know who I am.
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious. My gosh, this is not hard, right? Empathy, ownership statements work. They
And so
de-escalate.
here's the illustration that I've used forever, and I use this all the time. It's like a picture frame. So when you talk about checking the box, you know what? So the way that Intelligentics approaches it is we're going to create a framework. We want you to we want you to use a little empathy, take some ownership, but guess what? That could be stated 10, 15, 20 different ways. So I don't care what the exact words you use. It's not about a script. It's about you internalizing what does that sound like and how do I do it in a way that is natural and comfortable for me. So that I'm the customers, everybody he talks to gets the same framework, but the person who's delivering it is themselves. The
Yeah.
picture of them comes out. It's personal.
Yeah. It's so funny, right? I've always felt that frameworks, not scripts, are the ways to go, right? I'm always going to help people discover the right framework and discover themselves inside of that. I mean,
Yes.
that's the big thing, right? The way that I am is not the way that you are. I know you're just as excited as I am, but you don't show it the same way. It doesn't
Yep.
mean that you're not excited. It just means that it's different, right? I mean, the way you share empathy, not the way that I share empathy. And I think that's great, man. So,
One more
uh,
thing that you're
yeah,
saying that
yeah,
I think this is really
yeah.
important. Another lesson that I've learned. Um, hey, I love Zappos too. I love I love what they're doing, and I love what they do with customer service. You're not Zappos. You have a different corporate culture, and I think it's great to take the customer service tour and learn how they do that and figure out, are there things here that we can take for ourselves. However, every client I've ever worked with is their own unique corporate culture, with a culture that flows down from the CEO suite, with their own personality and values and things that are important to them. And trying to just rubber stamp a process, it doesn't work. Pieces of it may work, but you've got to figure out how to be the best you from a company perspective based on your size, your region, your customer base, your culture, your values, your mission of your company.
Yeah. That's a wonderful reminder, right? That we're not Zappos, but we can use, the fact that we care, that we have people who live our culture. That is our differentiator,
Yep.
really, not Zappos culture, your culture as a company. So I
Yep.
dig that, Tom. I think, that's a great place to remind people to start, right? If they're wondering where to start by defining those core values and what that sounds like, what that feels
Yes.
like, not necessarily the words that you use, but what is an empathy ownership statement? Define that, right? Put that in your
Yep.
vocabulary and let the whole team say what theirs is, because there's not a right answer, but being a jackass is definitely the wrong answer,
Right.
right? If you don't have
Yes.
any empathy and you don't own it, right, that's wrong. So don't say, oh, just say whatever you want, but let's talk about that, right? What does empathy sound like for you? What
Yes.
is right? What does ownership mean to you? So where else should we, as we're wrapping up here, Tom, where else should we get started? What is some of that low-hanging fruit
Yep.
so that we can deliver a better experience to folks?
Yes. So I would say another piece of low hanging fruit is understanding. If you haven't done any quality assessment, if you're not really digging into this, you're just kind of going, hey, we're just trying to figure out what we should do. The one-time assessment, I think, is a good one. Another one is start by looking at what are the things that are driving lack of resolution. Number one, two, what are causing the reasons that people are calling or emailing us. So why are they doing that, and where are there opportunities to improve and create some things systemically so we're not having these problems? Number two, where are we not resolving the customer's issue. So start by listening to, when are we telling customers, I'm going to have to check on that and call you back? Where are there systemically and operationally places where it's like, oh, we always have to take a number and call them, or we need to find this information and email them back? Those are the places where your customers are, you are already losing in the customer's mind. How can we, and you got to start by going, how often is this happening? What is driving those 2, 3, 4 contact situations? Dig into those, because eliminating the dissatisfaction from those really painful situations is going to get you a long way, even before you start working on improving those consistent one-on-one one-on-one conversations every phone call.
Yeah, I dig that. So why are people contacting us, and opportunities to fix? And that could be, look through your FAQ. What gets the most hits, right?
Yep.
What are the frequently asked questions that your reps are getting? Where's the emails, right? Do some analysis of that. And then where are we not even resolving? I mean, I'll tell you from my experience, Tom, back when I did manage call centers, not resolving is the worst thing in the world, because it's ambiguous, and it's just empty. Everybody wants resolution.
Yep.
Everybody wants resolution. We want that closed loop in our head, and we need that. So I dig that, Tom.
I can tell you too, just from a data perspective, let me give you some data behind this. Intelligentics research team, when we do research from a contact center, we always ask the caller, how many contacts did it take for you to get your issue resolved? So then we take everybody in each bucket, and we look at the ones who said it was one contact, and we look at how many of them said that they were satisfied or very satisfied overall with the company. Then we take people who said 2. What percentage of them said they were satisfied or very satisfied? And 3 and 4. And I can tell you, as soon as you go to 2, you've lost. And especially when you get to 3 or 4, you got customers that are probably willing to walk away and never do business with you again.
Eesh. Oof. Well,
I got the data to back it up.
Yeah, no, you totally do, man. 40 years of good stuff there that you've been gathering there at Intelligentics.com. You've got a great blog. I love that you call that IntelliTalk. I think that's really fun that we have that there. That's great. Tom's got a lot of great articles at Intelligentics.com. INTELLIGENTICS. Intelligentics.com, where intelligence meets tactics. Tom, we're going to have to do this again, man. Thanks so much for sharing so much great stuff with us, brother.
Thanks so much, Phil. It's good to see you again, and we'll make this happen again.
Heck yeah. Got to do this again, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and start by figuring out that you are not ZAPPOS, but you are something amazing that you can actually take advantage of and use to your competitive advantage. See you soon, folks.